Hello, I'm Vanessa Maria Graber, and you are listening to and watching the People Power Lunch Hour Show on Philly Cam TV and WPPM LP and Philadelphia. On today's show, we are going to be shining a light on the work of trans, LGBT, and gender nonconforming activists here in the community. We'll be speaking with Anï Canepa from the Youth Leadership Board at the Mazzoni Center, and also with Kade Collins and Ashley Pressley and Chyna Danforth. They are from the Morris Home. We are going to be talking about the work that they're doing to make spaces more accessible and also to support trans and gender non-conforming people here in our city. Stay tuned for all that and more on this edition of the People Power Lunch Hour. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and continuing with our theme this month about trans and LGBT visibility, we are joined in the studio by one of our amazing youth leaders here in Philly, Anï Canepa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Anï is an 18-year-old proud Jewish queer teen who loves music, art, animals, and activists. When they're not focused on their art, they spend time involved in their regional queer community. Their work ranges from helping the local community center to running their school's GSA, volunteering for Philadelphia Pride, and housing LGBTQ and local kids in need. They are currently serving on the Mazzoni Center's Youth Leadership Board and also on GLSEN's National Student Council. You do quite a lot. Thank you so much for all the work you do. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to get involved in advocacy work.
In all honesty, I kind of got involved because I got tired of people saying, like, getting angry over things and then not doing anything about them. I was running some local things, ran my middle school's GSA. I started that, and I was running my high school's GSA. And it was around after, the 2016 election. And I was like, look, something has to be done. And I signed up to do the GLSEN's National Student Council. And it was kind of like the rolling ball of like, I see so many people getting angry, but nobody actually doing anything. Locally, they'll be like, oh, this is happening. I'm like, but what are you doing to get out there? So I was like, look, if I have a platform for my voice, if I can find the platform, I'm going to use it. So I kind of was like, all right, let's just hop into it. Like, there's no saying no once you're on it.
And so you were involved with the Mazzoni Center's Brave Schools program?
Yes, I am.
So if you're unaware of the Mazzoni Center's Brave School program, it supports LGBTQ youth, school staff, and their allies in creating safe and inclusive school environments, avenues for youth-driven advocacy and policy change, and platforms to share resources and explore intersectional identity in order to promote long-term health and wellness in LGBT communities. And so I think some of the goals include, making schools safe spaces. Tell us more about that.
Well, there's currently a bill that is in action. It got put into action, I believe, a couple years ago for transgender and gender nonconforming students within the Philadelphia city limits. Sadly, it doesn't affect the suburbs right now, but it gives them rights to bathrooms, it gives them rights to, changing spaces, to things that their gender identity might need. It protects them within schools, it protects their name. I don't know every single detail, sadly, but it basically, like, if people misgender them, they have the right to stand up for themselves, and the school has to stand up for them. And their identities. So it's really good for local students to be themselves, dare I say, because the protections sadly are needed to exist. And that's what it is, a protection to exist.
Yeah, so I have a copy of the bill here. So if you want to look it up, it's number 252, Transgender and Gender Nonconforming Students. And it says the policy is to ensure safety, equity, and justice for all students, regardless of their gender identity or gender expression, so they can reach their fullest human and intellectual potential. And so it provides some of these protections that you had mentioned. So one of them in here, and again, we're here to educate people, so we're not assuming that everybody is familiar with all of these terms, but there's a section on names and pronouns. And it would be great if you could just shed a little bit of light on that for people. You know, it's sometimes at the bottom of people's email signature, it says their pronouns, and it's on name tags now. And I have a sign outside my door about pronouns, and people still ask me all the time, what does that mean?
Well, a pronoun is how you refer to someone. So, like, she got a hat, he got a hat, they got a hat. And of course, there's sometimes variations of that. Changes. There are certain things where people have other pronouns than he, she, they. There's a lot to go into there, so I'm just going to kind of stick to the main three. She is feminine, he is masculine, they is neutral. And it's just kind of how you refer to someone in conversation or in passing or what they're doing. And using they usually exemplifies like a non-binary person or gender neutral person. And a lot of backlash in that is people say, well, I don't get it. Or they're like, that isn't forming to the like English language. That isn't how it works. And it's funny because I've had to teach educators this before. We use they, them pronouns. They're like, well, it's not singular. We use it singularly every day in conversation. Like I said, hat. Let's say you're in a library and you see someone left a hat on a table. You don't say someone left his or her hat on the table. You say someone left their hat on the table. It isn't saying that it's multiple people's hat. You're saying it's someone's hat who doesn't have, their gender isn't binary or their gender isn't out there right now. Therefore, we have this in our everyday lives. Like, it isn't this brand new idea that people are making up. It's something that we use singularly, regularly, and having it, just used in everyday conversation is important for a lot of people, like myself, who go by that as part of their pronoun. I have a pronoun set. I go by any and all pronouns. But when people use it singularly, it's kind of to not just comfort, but like to one's identity. So that's the importance in pronouns. In names, it kind of goes similarly. It's just a lot of trans people change their name. Not all. There's some trans people who keep their name, but it's just a shift in showing their identity outwardly and that shift in life.
Yeah, here at WPPM, you might be surprised to know that a lot of our DJs' names are not their real names, right? Like, people adopt other names all the time. And it seems to me a small thing to just call somebody by what they want to be called.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes there is an understanding of like, it isn't just like, oh, I want to be called a new name. It's like, this is this person's name. Mm-hmm. This is their name now. It isn't, like I've had people, say as friends' new names. It's like, oh, that's their nickname. I'm like, no, that's his name. Like, it's this whole, how do I put this? People want to disengage from the conversation, so they ignore it completely or use a shortened version of the name to try to like avoid it and sound otherwise. But it's all part of one's identity. One's name is their identity and how they present. So it's really easy to just call someone by their name. Like, I don't see the issue. Mm-hmm. Just being like, oh, that's their name now. Like, mm-hmm. Whoa, it's just their name.
Yeah, I mean, it's a respectful kind of thing too, to say this is who I am, and this is how you should refer to me. So that's one small thing that can have a good impact, right? And also, like, kind of dictate the terms of your relationship, right? So if you embrace, okay, I'm gonna call you Anï, for example, you're gonna call me Vanessa, right? That sort of opens up the door for dialogue, right? But if you sort of reject that and don't want to respect the person.
Yeah, that's typically when people are, talking to someone, let's say a friend, and they constantly misgender, which is like saying the wrong gendered either name or pronouns repetitively despite knowing and not making an effort to try. So if, someone's friends with someone who constantly misgenders them, they typically will stop talking to them and stop being friends with them because it's a dismissal of their personality. It's just rude. It opens up the conversation. If someone's purposely misgendering them, it's kind of a red flag. It's like you're not a good person. You are being disrespectful. It's that kind of situation. Although I will say there are people who, take time and then they're conscious and they're aware of the fact that they're using the wrong pronouns and they like switch it like last minute. They're like, I'm sorry. I mean, like sometimes people are kind of overwhelming with that. Like, oh, I know they're blah, 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 and then going on this whole rant. It's like you can just correct yourself briefly. If you mess up, that's something that's big that I say. People are allowed to mess up. People are humans. Make sure you correct your mistakes, but just do it gently. Don't make a show of it. Don't pull everyone's attention. Just be like, oh, sorry, if someone slips into this, she, oh, I'm sorry, he. Like, you can continue conversation. Like, it's a growth process, especially because society is so ingrained in, binaryism, and society is new to trans people, but not really. Like, trans people have always existed, but it's new to it being like a public accepted idea.
What do you think the resistance is to that? Because historically, if you look at artifacts and literature and art from many civilizations, there's always been a third gender or no gender or gender fluidity. But yet today in 2019, people are really stuck on the binary. Like, what do you think that's all about?
I always say, I'm like, it's a spread of Western culture. Like, it's always, if you look into like Western areas, there's this like binaryism, and basically everyone else is like, hey, you're you. And it's that, dare I say, colonizer idea of like, strict, this is the way of life, this is the way of life, yada yada.
And patriarchal idea, right?
Patriarchal, yeah. It's a total control aspect. It's not having fluidity in life overall. As a society, we're not very fluid generally. We don't, have gray areas. A lot of people think in black and white and just, here's this step. We're going to get from point A to point B. I'm going to graduate high school. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get a job, and then I'm going to retire, and then I'm going to die. Like, there's no, in our everyday lives, there's no fluidity. And so the concept now that gender isn't the strict, point A, point B is scaring people, because they have this rigid lifestyle that's ingrained into them that anything that isn't rigid is scary. So that's my kind of perspective. Like, Western culture has kind of forced its way into the mind of people to the point in which they can't accept any variation of what they consider everyday life.
But I think that there's real freedom in embracing the fluidity.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, Can I curse?
No
Okay,
cussing.
yeah, making sure. All right. There's a kind of like blanket attitude. Like, like you have this empowerment in it. You have this like, I'm gonna like yell at the system, like, while also being like, I'm being me. Like, it isn't, I'm gonna yell at the system because it's the system and boo the system. It's, I'm gonna yell at the system because they're disregarding other identities. There's this kind of like, I sometimes think of it as like the 5 second of Pride fun, because after Pride you go back to being you. There's always this like, okay, at the end of Pride Month we are still LGBTQ and we still face persecution, but there's still like this few seconds of breathing where we can exist, and it's nice to have those few seconds of breathing, because that's the openness, that's the blank you attitude.
Mm-hmm. All right, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to and watching the People Power Lunch Hour show on PhillyCam TV and WPPM. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. I'm speaking with youth activist Anï Canepa, and we've been talking about gender fluidity and pronouns and how to treat others with respect. And when we come back, we'll talk more about her service on the GLSEN National Student Council Board and some of the education that they've been doing with teachers here in the area. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. And again, we're trying to shine a light this month on trans LGBTQ lives here in Philadelphia. And with me in studio, I have a local youth activist who works with the Mazzoni Center and also the GLSEN National Leadership Board, Anï Canepa. And they've been working on making schools safer spaces and educating teachers and doing many other things to advocate for the LGBTQ community. So, as I was mentioning, you serve also on the GLSEN National Student Council. And GLSEN was founded in 1990 by a small but dedicated group of teachers who came together to improve education system that too frequently allows its gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning students to be bullied, discriminated against, or fall through the cracks. And they have a youth leadership board that's leading national education around these issues and ensuring safe and affirming schools for LGBT students. And on their website, I read this, statistic, which, is really troubling, but they face a pervasive problem with a set of new challenges. 8 out of 10 LGBT students are still harassed at school each year because of who they are, and GLSEN is working to change that. So tell me a little bit about this National Student Council. I believe there's only 18 of you, a small group from all over the country. So thank you for representing the Philly area.
Yeah, actually, there's 15 right now, which is progressed over the school year, dare I say. Surprisingly, actually, 3 of us are from the Philadelphia area. There is one who lives in Philadelphia, another member who lives in the other side of the suburbs, and I live on the opposite side of the suburbs. But we're spread out over the nation, and we are advocates and activists who, help with content media with GLSEN. We sometimes work as representatives at various situations. In those cases, but it's dedicated around youth activism work, and because they're a youth organization, it's kind of like sounding like, here's the youth voices. Like, we're not just saying words, it's we're the words of the youth.
Why do you think it's really important to have youth leadership that's involved in the decision making and to really have their own representation on these issues?
Because youth are usually the ones who are unspoken for. We don't have voting rights usually. I mean, I'm 18 now, but most people who consider youth K through 12 cannot vote. And because we don't have a voice in that way, we find ways of making our own voice, whether it's through national things, whether it's through local things like Mazzoni. We find our way, we kind of weasel through the system and are like, all right, we're going to say what we need to say real quick before, someone shuts us off. So it's this we're the next generation and we're pushing for ourselves.
What do you like about doing all this sort of organizing leadership work?
What do I like about it? I like the experiences. Oh, this is going to be kind of silly and kind of sappy. Seeing the youth, it helps. A story that comes to mind, like, immediately is I went to the GLSEN Respect Awards in LA in October, and not after the awards, this was during the end. I've already gone up on stage. I'd spoken to people, yada, yada. I'm waiting as other people are presenting, and I'm sitting in the very back with some of their members. And a little person, little kid comes up with their parent. I'm, sitting there kind of, chilling. And they are like, their mom speaks for them and is like, they're so impressed, they're amazed, like you're like their hero right now. And like this kid was too scared to talk, like hiding behind them, like excited and smiling. And it was seeing that face of like someone who couldn't have been older than, I'd probably say like 10, like excited to see people being activists at a young age, seeing them work hard for them, because that's what we're doing. We're, all the people my age who want to do activism are doing it for the younger people and for our futures. And seeing the younger people get, overwhelmingly like excited and happy and just like, because there's someone out there speaking is probably the best part. It's what makes it, important. It's what makes it like, so it's why we dedicate ourselves.
Yeah, that's really important, and especially when you make headway, like there's progress being made. That's something that's something for us to celebrate. And I think it like makes people definitely more empowered once they see that the progress is being made through their hard work. I wanted to talk about some of the work that you're doing to educate teachers. And you said earlier that you recently had a Youth Voices Summit about safe spaces in schools. Tell us about the summit.
We did. With Mazzoni's Youth Leadership Board group, we put together a whole summit for educators locally, I would say in the Philadelphia area / greater Philadelphia area. I believe there were some who were, outside of Philadelphia itself. And we had a panel. We had a couple workshops ran throughout the day. It was about educating educators on how to create safer spaces, how to be allies for students, if they aren't already, in the community themselves, how to create these spaces from the youth. Like, we're sitting here speaking, we're like, this is what we need. It isn't someone else telling you, we think these kids need. No, we're like, it literally says Youth Voices Summit. It's the youth voices saying, all right, here is what we need. We were educating them. I ran a history and education workshop on LGBTQ topics that can be involved in schools because they're not very often involved in classrooms. So the work goes around making sure that the teachers are educated, the teachers know what to say, know what to do, because they're the ones who spend a good deal of the day with the students and with youth.
So that's really important because there's not a lot of education provided for teachers. So we sort of have to like outsource that, right, to groups like yours. Mm-hmm. Do you think teachers have been embracing this? Are you being met with resistance? Like, what's the reaction?
I feel like it's relatively embracing, in my opinion, from what I see. The thing is, you always have the good and you have the bad. No matter where you're going to be, there's going to be accepting students, accepting teachers, and not accepting teachers who are going to push back. And you have to find that balance and find the teachers who really care and get them the power. Because if the people who are accepting to it have the more power, they have more say. If it's the people who don't accept it and they have the more power, that's where the issue lies. So educating properly and making sure the people who are the educators who know are, the strong ones. There's the reaching out to administrators, and those are the people who really have the change in it because they have the say over the whole area. So it's this whole like, all right, let's make sure that people are knowledgeable, even if others aren't all fully accepting. If you can have the large majority of people who are comfortable in accepting, that's, the key part.
What are some of the biggest questions you get either from LGBTQ youth or from teachers in terms of like all of this like safe spaces, inclusivity stuff?
I mean, from what I hear a lot from teachers, it's funny because in my school, whenever teachers come to me with questions, it's always about pronouns, or it's about, how do I include students in this? How do I make sure they're comfortable? Like the questions always revolve around, how do I create a safe space? I know that I can create one. I don't know how. And it's, my own answer is always like, make sure using gender neutral language, make sure, if you have that syllabus, if it's not anonymous, but like private, if you want to include, say, optional name pronouns, all that kind of stuff. It's what I hear a lot is just, well, how do I change? How do I make the change? It's like, you just do it. You listen to what people are saying. You know, there's a lot of people saying, you know, just use the language and just put it in there. You know, I hear a lot, you know, I want to make the change, then make the change.
That's great advice. So if you're listening out there, you know, first thing you have to do is educate yourself, right? There's like a lot of literature online about all of these issues. And if you're a parent out there listening or watching and you have a child in the Philadelphia School District, definitely look up the 252 bill around transgender and gender nonconforming students, because parents, like, you should be the first advocates for your child, right? And so knowing their rights and being able to exercise those rights in terms of like how they should be treated in their schools. This bill will tell you all of that. And also, you know, for parents to get involved too, and also take part in the education. And, you know, we all as a community need to come together and support youth and these students. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to like tell the community, our listeners and viewers out there, in terms of, you know, a message that you have, or if there is youth listening right now that may have been harassed or feeling isolated in their schools, like what advice or what message do you have for them?
I don't want to go with the classic, oh, it gets better. Because, like, It doesn't always get better. You know, there's a lot of people who are older say every day you're still coming out. Every day is still that struggle. But it gets easier over time. Like, that's something I will say. You know, if you're getting harassed, one day you can go somewhere better or find somewhere more accepting. You find your chosen family. And a word of motivation is the world's still changing. We aren't set in a time period in which it won't progress, you know, and if you want it to progress badly, you can be the progression. People think, well, I can't get into it. You can. Everyday people can get involved with these things if they're really passionate about it. So you can make the change if you really feel that drive for it. Like, not to be cheesy, like everyone can do it. You can do it. Like, I'm an everyday person. I kind of waltzed into this like, I'm just going to do something. And now I'm doing something. You know, it's this mindset of it needs to get done, so I'm going to get it done. And you can get it done. You know, we're everyday people too. We're doing it. And
a message to our straight allies that you too can support this movement and advocate for your LGBTQ friends out there and community members. It's a community effort, right? So we all need to work together. Can people find you on Instagram or social media?
Yes, my Instagram is just hear me out. It's soap-mouth. Just kind of casual fun. I didn't want anything too, you know, strict businessy. I was like, oh, that's fun. That's funky. So my Instagram is soap-mouth.
Okay, so if you, again, want to get involved in this type of activism in your school, Anï is a great resource to help you get connected to some other resources out there. And also, you can always get involved in the Mazzoni Center Brave Schools program. Again, they support LGBT youth, school staff, and their allies in creating safe and inclusive school environments. Anï, it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all you do and for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with some folks from the Morris Home, one of the region's only rehabilitation centers for the trans population. We'll be right back. You're listening to the People Power Lunch Hour on Philly Cam TV and WPPM LP Philadelphia. Hello, and welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. And on today's show, we are continuing with our theme this month to shine a light on LGBTQ lives here in Philadelphia. We've been featuring the work of advocates and other people in the community who are trying to make our spaces safer and more inclusive. On this part of the show, I have with me in the studio Kade Collins, Ashley Pressley, and Chyna Danforth, and they have been working with the Morris Home, which is part of Resources for Human Development, a nonprofit organization here in Philadelphia that has many, many great services. But the Morris Home is unique because they support trans and gender nonconforming individuals as they develop the knowledge, skills, and supports necessary to promote sobriety, manage emotional and behavioral difficulties, choose and maintain safe and healthy lifestyles, and develop healthy relationships with peers, family, and the community. The Morris Home is the only residential recovery program in the entire country to offer comprehensive services specifically for the transgender community. And they provide a safe, recovery-oriented environment in which people are treated with respect and dignity. And if you are curious, you might have heard the name Nyjah Morris. The Morris Home is named for Nyjah, a Philadelphia transgender woman who was murdered in 2002. The program has become an active part of the LGBT community, and this is an effort to commemorate her life. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
So, Kade, I want to start with you. You were one of the therapists at Morris Home. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do.
So I've been with RHD Morris Home now for about 4 years. I started out as an intern there and just fell in love with the work and have continued, been privileged enough to continue working there. I guess for Morris Home, we specifically take a trauma-informed, strength-based approach to the work that we do. So Morris Home is actually, we provide the highest level of care in Philadelphia. Other settings delivering that level of care might look more like institutional hospital settings.
Yes.
But for Morris Home, we want it to look and feel like a home, like a sanctuary, and really, helping our members, we call our clients members, through a trauma-informed lens, understanding that, addiction and all of these things that people are battling are really the result of trauma that they've experienced due to various systemic oppressions. So the work that we do there is really providing a sanctuary. Everybody has their own room. They can lock their door behind them, have a safe place to go at the end of the day. And we provide, a variety of clinical groups on a daily basis, individual therapy, and connecting people to community supports outside of Morris Home to start building sort of support systems for when our members are ready to graduate and move on to living independently.
Yes, well said.
Thank you.
Yes, and this is very exciting because I believe this can serve as a national model for the kind of recovery centers or rehab centers for trans people that can be sort of replicated in other cities, and it's probably needed in every single city.
Yes.
So, Chyna,
Yes.
Chyna
Hey.
Danforth, welcome to the
Thank
People
you for
Power Lunch
having me.
Hour.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited to have you here too. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with the Morris Home.
Okay. I'm 40 years old, and I've been at the Morris Home for 13 months. It's been an experience. It's been a great experience. I think for me, like the most thing that I love the most about the Morris Home is that for so many years, like I've, spent my life doing drugs. I wasn't happy. And since I've been there, because it's like I'm free now. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's just been a great experience for me. And I just love being there and appreciate it.
Do you think you found a sense of community being there with
Most
others like
definitely.
you?
Most definitely. I've definitely found a sense of community.
All right, Ashley Pressley, I want to welcome you to the show
Thank you
too.
so much.
Hey, Ash.
Tell us a little bit about your experience as well.
I'm 25 years old.
Mhm.
I've been at the Morris home a few times actually. This time I did decide to finally, get it right and get focused on myself and work on some things because being trans isn't easy all the time. Especially when you're homeless and your family's not really supporting you
Yes.
all the time. So being at the Morris home has made me feel so comfortable and welcome and a place to come where it's safe at. And not worried about, what's going on or, where I'm going to sleep at or, being harmed.
Yes.
But I love the Morris home. It's a great place. I recommend it to people that are out there and that are trans and looking for help. Yeah.
Kade, as a therapist there, like what are some of the biggest commonalities some of the participants have? And, what are some trends in terms of, the challenges that they face here in Philadelphia?
Sure. There are definitely commonalities that many of our members have. We talk a lot about like kind of a pipeline from starting out, usually facing a lot of discrimination or bullying in schools,
Yes.
having that not be a safe or accepting environment. And in combination with maybe not having family support as well, it's pretty much the most likely scenario that people may move into having to be street homeless, having to leave home in order to be themselves. And, if you're a kid and you're homeless and you don't have anything, you're likely to engage in underground economies like narcotics trade or survival sex work. Then you're more likely to have encounters with the police, which is more trauma,
Yes.
more institutionalization, and things like that, making it then harder to also find employment on the books, things like that. So there's definitely sort of things that many people have in common, and it's the result of systemic oppression, specifically for our members who are mostly Black trans women. So they're at the intersections of multiple oppressions, which make that such a common narrative.
We've made a lot of strides in Philadelphia. I mean, if you look in the past, 30, 40 years, there was, obviously a lot of activism happening, especially around the HIV AIDS movement and LGBT equality, but we still have a long way to go.
Yes, we do.
What are some of the things that you are advocating for or you would like to see change? Of course, this is People Power Lunch Hour. We have a message to bring, right? So,
Yes.
so what are the things that you would like to see change? What's your vision for a more inclusive world?
Okay, well, it's 2019, right? And yes, we definitely have come a long way. And we do still have still some ways to go. But I know for me being a trans woman, right, I've been through so much stuff. And I think the only thing I'm asking for, because the world can be so malice, they can be so scary at times. And for me, first, with me, I'm just a human being. And I think, for me that, I don't know what to say after that. But with that, me just being a human being, I don't know, with people can be so harsh to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm trying to say? So just treat us just like regular people and forget the trans part. We're just human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, Chyna, going off of what you're saying,
Yeah.
I think trans people needing to feel safe and accepted in all the public arenas that everybody else gets to feel accepted. So that's school, that's going to your doctor, that's the DMV, that's if you have to go to a hospital. All of these places, any sorts of institutions like that just people need to access, there's going to be trans people who need to access those spaces. So trans competency trainings across the board in all schools, all hospitals, all arenas. Everywhere, so that I think people don't understand that for a lot of trans people, just trying to live your day-to-day life is really difficult when you're facing microaggressions or real threats of danger constantly when you're just trying to, go get your ID or try to get a job, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off of Chyna and Kate, actually. I do know being trans and looking for work is really hard for some people. I don't think it's fair for people to judge you because you aren't passable enough to get the job.
Exactly.
That's something that I would like to say because it's not fair. Like, I shouldn't have to be, looking this kind of way so I can work here without, anybody giving me a problem at the job. Even myself, I was currently working at ShopRite, and it wasn't a bad experience. But at the same time, they were just like, oh, she's trans, and
Yes.
judging me, and seeing little things, which didn't bother me. Luckily, because I'm a strong individual. But for some people, they don't have the mindset or the strength to,
Get through
just
it.
like take that and be like, okay, I can get through this, So that's something I would definitely love to see happen.
Yeah.
Just being accepted.
If you're just tuning in and listening, you are hearing the voices of Ashley Pressley, Kade Collins, and Chyna Danforth. And they're here on behalf of the Morris Home, which is one of the only rehab centers in the entire country that is working and prioritizing the needs of trans and gender nonconforming individuals. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more with them and talk more about their experiences and hear their stories. You're listening to the People Power Lunch Hour on WPPM and watching on Philly Cam TV. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. This month's theme of the People Power Lunch Hour is trans and non-gender conforming visibility. We are speaking with people in the community that are advocating for safer spaces, more inclusivity, and equality. And with me, I have Kade Collins, Ashley Pressley, and Chyna Danforth. And they're with the Morris Home, and they've been talking about their experiences there. Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you.
Now, for any of you, is this your first time on TV and radio?
Yes. This is my first time. It's a little nervous, but I'm doing fine.
And how about for you, Ashley?
My first time as well. Yeah, it's different.
Well, we need more voices like yours here
Yeah.
at Philly Cam. So don't be shy. We're super excited to have you here. And yeah, we're really just interested in hearing your story. And I think I asked the last guest this, like, what's your message for others like you who might be in a dark place, who might be struggling and need help? What would you say to them?
Love yourself.
Amen.
Keep loving yourself. That's really important. What do you think, Ashley?
Wow, it's a lot. Because from my experience, it took me a minute to accept myself and who I was. Sometimes it can be hard for your family to accept you, but believing in God, that's important to me.
Very important.
Believing in Him, and some people do bring up, oh, God don't approve of it, and it's not right, but that's not true at all. And that's just my opinion.
It's facts.
Because it's okay to be yourself. It is, and just loving yourself, and it's just something that's that has to be worked through, and just stay positive and just keep your head up regardless of what's going on or what people are saying to harm you or to hurt your feelings. Just keep your head up and just stay positive.
Yes, most definitely.
I want to talk about an issue that is very sad and heartbreaking, but I think it deserves attention. and that is the violence and murder perpetuated against trans women of color, because I don't think the media gives enough attention to those people who have suffered at the hands of this type of oppression. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your own fears of safety, or how these things have affected your community? And again, just want to hear your perspective on that.
I actually lost a friend to violence. She was trans. Rest in peace, London. She was murdered by someone. I wouldn't say I don't feel safe, but I'm always just like aware of who I surround myself with. Just like meeting guys, because I am a nice looking girl, and I do attract guys that find me attractive, but at the same time, how can I trust them? And that makes me kind of nervous too, because people can change on you so fast.
Most definitely.
And being trans is just like it's a good thing, and it can be looked at.
It can be a bad thing.
Yeah, it can be a bad thing sometimes. But someone trying to harm me, or just take me out of this world, I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
So I find myself a lot, just trying to be safe, and just watching who I might talk to, even with sex work. I've done it since I was 17, and being out there, I always pray, like, God, please watch over me, and keep me safe.
Yes.
Because that's not something that I really want to get into. Unfortunately, I did have to get into that because of me being so homeless. But yeah, me being just like out there in this world, I wouldn't say my family's not supportive, but sometimes it can be like, wow, like who's out there watching me, or looking to harm me? Like, am I a target? Yeah.
I totally agree. I think, in today's world, it's so much violence in the world, period. People don't have no conscience today. I mean, but, through all that, like with me, like I'm not going to live in fear. I will not allow myself to live in fear. It's just so sad that people just cannot mind their business. If it's not something that you don't understand, all you have to do is ask. And it's just so sad that we just live in this type of world where people cannot be themselves. It's so unfortunate.
Kade?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of it too is a direct result of what we're talking about, of these like systemic barriers for trans people to participate in society just like everybody else, and pushed into really unsafe situations. Where people have to be in those situations in order to survive. So I think people, if you have the power to advocate, for trans competency where you work, or you can hire trans people, look out for your students who are trans. It's everybody's work to do to start breaking this stuff down, and making this at least, a less, like something less common that happens. We've gone to I think 2 funerals in the last 6 months. And it's too much, and it collectively traumatizes people over and over again to have to experience that and have to lose your friends that you have survived with, and just knowing that you've been in those same spaces, and that's
it's scary.
It's a lot. Yeah,
I know a lot of it has to like a lot of girls, a lot of murders do come from sex work. And I don't think it's fair at all.
Yeah.
And that just brings up like a lot of emotions for me, because I do know girls that did sex work, like Chyna, and that's not something that she wanted. I think for families, should be more supportive to that person, because some people do not choose to want to do that, and it leads them to want to do that, and then they end up dead. So.
And I think a lot of families don't support their family members when they come out as trans, because they're worried about what they know about these like horrible or scary things that happen to trans people. but inadvertently don't accept people and send them right into those situations. So if you do have, trans people that come out to you at where you work, in your family, your friends, embrace them and support them. Don't try to talk them out of being trans.
No.
That's the opposite of helpful, or of helping that person stay as safe as possible.
Which is so awesome. I remember when I first came here, like I said, I'm 40 years old. I came to Philadelphia in 97. I've always known I was different my whole life, right? But in how can I put it? Because like in my hometown, like my mother kept me so sheltered. I wasn't around other gay people or trans, but when I came to Philadelphia, I remember seeing this trans woman, and she just made my dreams come true. And from then on, I've been Chyna, and I'm so grateful for that. But also, during that time, it was real sad and hurtful for me at the same time, because my mother, she just stopped loving me. She disowned me for 22 years. And that's where the drugs played out. I started doing things that wasn't healthy, because I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted, And it's just so sad, and it's just so scary at times for us, because we go through a lot. We didn't ask for this. It's just who we are.
But that's why it's important to hear from you and to have your voices, and share your stories.
Most definitely.
But I want to end on a positive note.
Yes.
And I want to talk about your new life, right?
Okay.
Sober life, having a community, having support, loving yourself. Tell us what joy you found in that journey.
Oh, God. It's so overwhelming. Like, I've been at the Morris home for a year, and I had 9 months clean, and then I had a relapse, because I took the focus off myself, right, and now I'm back on track with 4 months clean from everything. And when I tell you, it's just the most wonderful feeling ever to wake up and look in the mirror, and it's like, I love what I see. I love how I feel. I love how I look. I like how my skin is so clear. I just love everything about recovery. It's just so overwhelming.
And how about for you, Ashley?
I know for me, I love the new change. I honestly feel like when you put positive out into the universe, you get positive back.
Real rad.
Just sitting on that note.
Yep, most definitely.
Yeah.
And Kade, you help a lot of people. Tell me how it feels for you to be able to do this work and see the change in people.
Yeah. It feels like the biggest privilege in the world to be able to do this work. I know for myself, I'm trans, but I'm, white. I have family support. I'm masculine of center. I have a lot of privileges, and I feel privileged, again, to be able to use that privilege to try to serve trans community and my trans siblings. So I just feel really grateful, actually.
You are a
and
great therapist.
it's
We
wild
love
that it's
Kade.
a job.
It's
so
awesome.
It's really amazing.
Shout out to Kade.
Yay, Kade. We love Kade.
And shout out to everybody at Morris Home, right?
Yes, all the family that's there, Laura, all the girls, Mika. We love you guys.
For people that might be seeking help or need that support, Kade, can you provide some information
Sure.
about how to access the services?
Definitely. So we're RHD Morris Home. We're a nonprofit under Resources for Human Development. The best way is honestly just to call our program. You can just Google the number. I don't know if you want me to say the number. And we basically would just do a screening with you over the phone right then and there. And if that doesn't seem like a good fit, we will also help connect you to resources for whatever kinds of help you're looking for or in need of at that moment in time.
Yes.
It's a great program.
All right. Any other parting words before we wrap up?
Love yourself.
I was going to say that. Love yourself.
Can't get enough of it. Love yourself.
Yes.
It's okay to be you.
Yeah.
And love others. Love everybody, right?
everybody.
We're all human
Most definitely.
and we all deserve love
Love.
and respect, right?
Yes, we do.
It was a pleasure speaking with all of you. And
It was a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thank
I
you for
thank
having
you so
us.
much thank you so much for sharing your story. and you know, for speaking out in the community and for all the work that you all do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the People Power Lunch Hour Show. Again, I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. You can access this show and all of our shows on Philly Cam's website, phillycam.org. You can also visit our YouTube channel to see previous episodes of the People Power Lunch Hour. We'll be back in 2 weeks with an all-new theme and all-new episode. March 31st is Trans Day of Visibility. Make sure you go out there and, you know, support the community. And like I said, love and respect everybody. Thanks so much for watching and listening.